please give Anatoly, Russ a big warm welcome.
So today's message, we're going to be going from Ecclesiastes 12:1. So if you have your Bibles, just one verse. Peter made it difficult on me. We're going to have just one verse, Ecclesiastes 12:1. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come, and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no delight in them. Ah, the days of my youth. May I remember them fondly and never have to repeat them. In college, I remember I had this goal. I wasn't going to be the dude who got up at 12 noon and went to class and slacked off. I was going to be punctual. I was going to be the good kid. So what I did is I signed up for an 8 a.m. economics course. Now, I showed up for that 8 a.m. economics course, and I sat towards the front, and I promptly fell asleep. They managed to find the most boring professor, the most monotone, and the topic wasn't exactly one that inspired some kind of creative thinking in my head. So I did a lot of sleeping, but something did stick in my mind. One of the things that I remember from that course was this concept of opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is basically the cost of doing something over the cost of doing something else. So the opportunity cost of going to college isn't just the tuition, the books, the parking permits. It's also the fact that you're not earning money during that time. You could have gone and done ditch digging. You know, that was a source of income for you. So you're losing out on all the money that you're paying. You're losing out on all the money that you're not earning. And that is the opportunity cost. If you go to a movie, you pay for the ticket, you pay for the popcorn, you pay for the kid kicking the back of your seat, but you also pay in time. That time, once it passes, is not something that you're going to be able to get back. So there's an opportunity cost, and economists, they love formulas, so they said, option one, the cost of option one, the total cost of option one, minus option two is equal to your opportunity cost. And that might be positive or that might be negative. And depending on whether it's positive or negative, you could say that task was worth it or not. You want to get out of some place, you want to do something, you ascribe a lot of kind of monetary value to it, and it might be worth it. You know, you go and you dig ditches and you're like, I'm going to be the best ditch digger in the world. Going to college, I'm going to earn all that money, that's irrelevant to me. I want to dig ditches. So the calculation is going to kind of vary for everybody. Now, it sounds kind of basic and it's like, duh. Of course I'm going to choose the thing that's worth it. And economists, the only thing that they really do is they take a concept and they say, this is what we're going to officially call it. Now Solomon, he understood this too. And that's what his words are talking about. The fact that he's saying, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. What he's saying is there's an opportunity cost for forgetting your Creator in the days of your youth. And when the days that you have no delight in come, that's when you're going to really regret it. That's when you're going to really feel the cost. So he's saying, I'm warning you. You have time available when you're young that will not be available at any time past today, past tomorrow. The time that you spend here, you've said, it is more valuable for me to spend it here than it is to spend it somewhere else. And you're doing that. You're saying there's some kind of benefit that I'm getting to being here. And you could squander that time. You could squander the time doing things that feel good, but that don't give you the result that you want. You can go your entire life and you can say, I'm going to do things that I like, but in the end you're going to realize, well, I could have been doing something better. I could have gotten more out of life. I could have gotten more out of the time that I was given, the skills that I was given, the abilities that I have. And it won't make you happy in the end. In the end, you're going to realize, you know, I probably could have done something better. I lost out. It was a bad, bad investment. And I honestly believe that that question of happiness, that is what we're looking for. That is what our life is based on. How can I extract the most happiness out of my 80 years of life?
How can I get the most out of this time that I have here on earth? You don't get a do-over. You don't get to go back and say, well, I'd like to relive this part. I misused it a little. Once the time is gone, the time is gone. What you can say is, going forward, I'm going to change something. I'm going to make sure that going forward, the time that I have is used better, that I don't waste that time. But what's past is past. And this is what he's kind of addressing. And then we look at our life and we say, why am I not happy? We can look at the investments that we made in time and we can say, I went to college, or I graduated high school, or I'm searching out these relationships. And then you come back and you're like, I'm not happy. I thought I invested my time well, and my prospects on how my return would be, what the opportunity cost would be, I thought that it would be positive. And as a kid, I also thought, I'm like, happiness is inevitable. I'm going to get to a certain point in life and I'm going to say, I'm happy now. I've gotten rid of parental restrictions. I've gotten rid of the fact that I can't drive and the fact that I can't go places and buy things because I don't have money. Once I get to that specific place, that's when I'm going to be happy. And then I got there and I'm like, man, it doesn't seem like happiness is inevitable. It almost seems like it's unattainable, because all these things, I have money, I have no parental kind of oversight. Nobody's telling me to come home at 11. There's still moments where I'm like, I'm not happy. And you start thinking, maybe the rules of life, maybe the way that I understand life to happen, you do A, you do B, you do C, and then you win the game. Maybe I misunderstood the rules. Maybe the rules are different from what I expect them to be, and therefore I'm playing this game according to the rules, and I'm not getting ahead, and I'm not happy, so I need to play under a different set of rules. I need to play under a set of rules that will make me happy like other people that I see are happy. And you start thinking that maybe there's just too many constraints. Parents don't tell me what to do. I've got enough money. I need to get something else out of the way. And the first thing that we start compromising on is our morality, or the way that we think it's good for a person to live their life. We go out and we say, I'm going to change the way that I live life because I see the people who live differently, they seem to have happiness. These rules, these restrictions that we read in the Bible, they were for a different time. They were for a time when people lived out in the desert, for when families consisted of a mom and a dad and kids. That's when these rules were made for. My dad, and this is a true story, he was born in a village in the mountains in a mud hut. My kids were born in a modern hospital with clean rooms, with a floor, not a dirt floor, a polished floor, a disinfected floor. And short of your head popping off in the hospital, the doctors could basically save from anything. So why am I applying these rules that don't seem to be relevant, or at least created in a time when they can speak to truth? Why do I follow them? So with youthful and reckless abandon, we jump into a world that we hope will make us happy. A world where we can finally say, now I am finally going to live life according to the rules that will make me happy. And we do what the sermon title says. We are young and we are reckless. And we forget about God, who, like just the song we sang, had a reckless love for us. He went out and he did something for us against the rules, against what seemed reasonable, against what seemed good to do. And hey, if God can be reckless, we can be reckless too. We can also do things that don't necessarily work the way that they're supposed to work. I mean, I can be reckless. Maybe that'll give me happiness. And I don't want to be the person that I am. I mean, what other choice do I have? Look, I've been doing everything exactly the way that I'm supposed to be doing it. The way that my parents said, the way that the Bible says, whatever. I've been doing it. And it hasn't been working. It's time to change the game plan. There's a sad story that I keep hearing over and over, though, in people's lives. And I think you've heard it too. We have these couples where they're not exactly on good terms. And they just got married and they both figured out that they are terrible, terrible sinners. And that life, it's not exactly the way that we imagine it to be during the honeymoon. And they can't talk to each other, they can't interact with each other. So what they say is, we need a baby. A baby will tie us together. A baby will give us a joint thing to worry about. It'll make us work together whether we want to or not. It'll make us be kind to each other for the sake of the baby. And do you see any kind of problem with that? You bring an egotistical, self-centered, self-seeking, lazy person into the relationship. Or should I say another egotistical, self-centered person into the relationship. And then the problems increase because all of a sudden you have to get up at night when you don't want to, and the person who you didn't like initially is not getting up. And you have to take care of the baby and you don't want to and they don't want to. And now you're fighting not just about the problems that you have, but about the problems that result as a result of the baby. Now you're sitting here and you can say, of course, that's not a smart thing to do. Why would anybody take a problem, add another problem to it, and then things will get better? Why would you fix a car engine that's working poorly by actually fixing it? Just start ripping tubes out. It hasn't been working well before. It's not going to, work any better if I don't do anything. I'm just going to start ripping tubes out. And that's what we do with our lives. I don't have friends. I don't have relationships. I'm sad. I'm lonely. And any kind of friend is better than no friend. Any kind of relationship is better than no relationship. Drunken happiness is the same as sober sadness. What difference does it make? Psalms 1:1 says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, but stands in the way of sinner, nor stands in the way of sinner, nor sits in the seat of scoffers." And the result is that those phrases, no friend, some friend is better than no friend, that's not true. That's not reality. No friends is better than evil friends. No friends is better than ungodly friends. It is better to not stand in the way of evil people than to stand with them and be surrounded in company. It's better to not have a relationship, an ungodly relationship, than to have a relationship that is ungodly. It is better to be alone. And it's better to be sober and sad than under some kind of substance-fueled happiness. And when presented in that way, well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, for the baby, I can understand. They're bringing a problem in. I'm trying to solve a problem, but you're trying to solve it in the same way that bringing a baby into an unhappy relationship is trying to solve a problem. You're taking one mess, you're adding more on top of it, and you're hoping that the end result will be something good. You look at the opportunity costs of doing what you've been doing and think that doing something, anything, is better than that. And that's simply not true. And I want to convince you, I don't even want to convince you that making your way back to God is going to be difficult, because it is. I want to convince you that the place that you're going isn't even going to give you the happiness that you seek. You're going to be trying to find something that has no possibility of working. And yet our minds, we convince ourselves that somehow it's going to work. culture has done such a mind job on us that we think if we add a problem to our problems, we will get a solution. What a lie. I was talking with my neighbor, this was like 3 weeks ago, and he had a stack of tires outside of his garage, and somebody had come by in broad daylight, literally like 6 in the morning, chucked them in the back of their truck and drove away. Now this guy's a buff Mexican. I mean, he's not a guy you want to be stealing tires from. And I didn't know that before. I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't know. So in talking with him, he said, you know, one time this had happened to me before. I actually came home and these two guys were trying to steal the tires, the rims off my wife's BMW. And I caught them right in the act. And they hopped in their car and he hopped in his, and he chased them all the way from Natomas down Alberta. And as they were flying down Alberta, he managed to pit maneuver them. The car went into a ditch. The two guys come flying out, and my neighbor comes out with a tire iron. And he beat those guys. And it's funny, right? The end result was he blinded one of them, and he made one of them deaf. So when the cops came, and he said they came right after I finished beating them, they arrested me. Them they took to the hospital, and they arrested me. And he said, I just started a job at PG&E basically a week before. I had a previous felony, so the cop basically had to arrest me. It wasn't either, you know, whether you were guilty, self-defense, whatever, it didn't matter. He said, I lost the job. I got put in jail for a few days. And the question is, was it worth it? Was that moment of anger, was that impulsive action worth it? In the long term, I'm not talking in the quickly. I mean, I'm sure it felt good to beat somebody with a tire iron. It has been a long time since I've beat somebody with a tire iron. Long, long time. Maybe forever. But there is something that you realize, look, in the short term it might feel good. In the moment it might feel good. Now I haven't, like I said, beat anybody in a while with a tire iron. But I've done plenty of other things that in the moment they seem like a good idea. They seem like if I do this, it'll make me feel good. And what I didn't realize is that it carries with it opportunity costs. Devoting my time to certain things will cost me doing other things that I wanted to do. And each time you make that choice, it isn't just the repercussions of that choice that you have to live with. It is the repercussions of everything else that you didn't do instead. Youth and recklessness, they don't just take away in the moment, they take away potential that you might have had. They take away a future that you might have had. And you end up living in the present and you think, you know, maybe I should have done something else. But what's done is done. I mean, what are you going to change? And you go on to the next decision and it's the same thing. And it's the same thing, and it's the same thing. And we're so focused on the desire to fulfill whatever thing is bugging us right now that we fail to focus of what does it bring with it. Getting involved in a relationship that's ungodly precludes you from being involved in a relationship that is godly. Spending time with somebody who is going to convince you to smoke pot or do whatever else is taking time away. That's bad in and of itself, but it's taking time away from when you could be doing something better. You're losing out on the moment and you're losing out on the potential. And that's what we don't consider. We think, well, what's the worst that can happen? Who am I hurting? What am I doing that's so bad? And we think about only the repercussions of the item in the moment, of the thing in the moment, of the action in the moment, and we don't think further. We don't think into the future of what we're neglecting. And you might even get to the point where it seems almost sane. It doesn't seem reckless to do those things because you're not considering everything that follows. And there's no guarantee that what follows will be what you wanted, that will guide you to the happiness that you ultimately want in your life. We always think that we're going to be like that thief on the cross. We're going to come to a final moment and we're going to say, that's it. I'm done living the life that I lived, and now it's time to come back to Jesus. Judges 2:19 describes a situation where the people thought like that. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors. Following other gods and serving and worshiping them, they refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. How many of you are the same person that you were 5 years ago? How many of you are the same person you were a year ago? How many of you are the same person you were a week ago? What makes you think that a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to be thinking the way that you're thinking now? What makes you think that you're going to have that draw to God if you decide to travel on a path that directly leads you away from God? You're not going to be the same person. You're going to think, this person that I am in the moment will always be the same. The way that I think, the way that I act, it'll always be the same. So a little bit now, a little bit of wrong now will take a little bit to undo later. But we don't stay the same person. When we're surrounded by individuals who act as a bad influence on us, we change. And we can change either for the better or for the worse. And I'm not just talking about the fact that you're going to start with, drugs and heroin and, then you're going to overdose. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about your pursuit for fame, your pursuit for money, your pursuit for well-being. Those are the things that I'm talking about. The type of person that you'll become as a result of pursuing those things, if you pursue them in an ungodly way, there is no godly way to pursue pot, though. There are godly ways to pursue well-being and finances. But if you're pursuing those things in an ungodly way, they're going to change you in an ungodly way. So you're going to be young and reckless now, and you're going to be old and jaded later. And things aren't going to want to change. You're not going to want to move. You're not going to want to take a step in the direction of God. And you think, I'm going to become less broken. I'm going to become less unhappy if I break myself and I put myself in situations that will lead me to unhappiness. The logic just eludes me of how that's possible. Yet that's how we think in the moment. Not just you, me. We think in the moment that somehow by breaking something, by going against our conscience, by going against what we believe to be good and right, that somehow we will become good and right, that we will somehow become fixed and unbroken. We're thinking that if we pay in our youth, that we won't have to pay later on. But you will. You'll have to pay now, and you'll have to pay later, and you'll have to pay for all of that opportunity that you missed. To be somebody else, to be somebody better. The psalmist says, God, my greatest joy is that I know you and you know me. When we were getting married with my wife, there was one person that I wanted to be with. In the crowd were old friends, even some people, even some girls that I had crushes on. But I was not standing on stage. I did not want to get married to any of them. I wanted to marry my wife. And I was focused on my wife. There was a singular focus in my life because I wanted to find happiness and a family life with her. The whole crowd could have been filled with crushes. Every single one from kindergarten all the way till 21. All of them could have been there in the crowd and I would have been focused on one individual. And in that moment, I was not consumed with who I didn't marry. I was consumed with who I did. I want all of us to be so consumed with God, not with everything other than God. Not with all the missed opportunities for fun, not all the missed opportunities for recklessness. I want to be focused and content with just God in that moment. In my life, I want that to be my focus. Just on like the wedding day, I was focused just on my wife. I want every day of yours to be focused just on God. And if that focus isn't there, that's something to confess. That's something to acknowledge that your pursuit is of your crushes in the world and not of the person that you're trying to marry. That's something that you have to come to terms with. That there is something else drawing your gaze as you're standing on the stage ready to commit your life to one person. You're looking into the crowd, you're looking for somebody else. Meditate on His Word if that is your pursuit. Spend time with the person, with the God that you want joy to be found in. Spend time with Him in reading. Spend time with Him with prayer. These aren't new things. These aren't crazy revelations. But that's not something that we will do naturally. Naturally, we will be drawn to somebody else. We'll be drawn to something else. Something that makes us feel like the rules we're going to be playing under are going to let us finally win. And remember that a sermon, it might inspire you, but it's a community that'll shape you. A sermon might inspire you, but a community will shape you. The people that you surround yourself with, and this is a good place to surround yourself with good people. The community that you surround yourself with will have an impact. It'll impact who you become, what your desires will be, what your pursuits will be. And in that moment, you'll not just be going along on this young journey by yourself. There will be somebody else who will guide you along. Solomon, in his writing, he's being consumed by God. He's being consumed by this idea of God and who God is and what He can do and when the time to start serving Him is. And some of you have never really gotten to that full commitment. And that's why you struggle so much with trying to find happiness, trying to figure out what rules to live according to. Charles Spurgeon said, "The half-committed Christian is the most miserable person on earth. He's just enough in the world to be miserable in the presence of God. He's just enough in God to be miserable in the world." The problem isn't that you're bound too tight. It isn't that the rules that surround you are too stringent, too restrictive. It's that you're bound too loosely. You're being pulled in all of these different directions, in all of these different desires, and they mess with your mind. They mess with what you think will bring you happiness. And in the end you realize, I'm not happy in anything. I'm not happy with God. I'm not happy with society. And you've heard these stories. You've seen these people. And some of them make it back. Some of them realize that what they've committed their life to was a wasted opportunity. And you'll see them back in church, and they'll give their testimony, and they'll tell you, that was a mistake. And not only was it a mistake that damaged me, my well-being, my relationships, my family, but it also wasted all of this time that I'm never going to be able to get back. May God keep you so when the evil days come and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no delight in them. May God keep you from being young and reckless, so that when those days come, you'll be wise in God. and you won't regret the path that you've traveled. Amen.